and our residents, I will pass it over to Tressa, the Chief of Staff, for the roll call.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm going to just call out your organization, and if you could say here, that would be great. So I'm going to start with 3600 North Lakeshore Drive. Doug Smith. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. 3660 North Lakeshore Drive.
Here.
3900 North Lakeshore Drive. 4250 Marine Drive. 4300 Marine Drive. 4343 Clarendon. Okay. 4640 North Sheridan. 4848 North Sheridan. Charles? Here. Thank you. 4848, no, okay, we've got 4848 North Winthrop. Let's see. 555 Cornelia. Kurt?
Yep. Yep.
All right, thank you. Let's see. 655 West Irving Park. 700 West Bittersweet.
Here.
Thank you, Alice.
Oh, I am.
Hi, Kurt.
828 Grace.
Good evening, Tressa.
Hi, Patrick. 850 Eastwood. Ainsley Winmore Black Club. Brian? Okay. Let's see, Beacon Black Club.
Here.
Thanks, Dustin. Buena Park Neighbors.
Here.
Thanks, Alex. Castlewood Terrace. I don't think Ed's here. Clarendon Park Neighbors.
Here.
Hi, Jack.
Hi.
Clark Street Block Club.
Here.
Park Street's our new block club.
Yep. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Dover Street Neighbors. Lindsay or Scott? Okay. East Lakeview Neighbors.
I think I might be doing double duty tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay, sounds good. Friendly Towers, Glenn said he couldn't make it. Gill Park Co-op, 810 Grace. Let's see. Graceland Wilson. Jason. Gunnison. Let's see. Our historic representative, Martin Tangora.
Here.
Thank you. Lakeview area neighbors.
Here.
Or Lakeside area, sorry, not Lakeview.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chelsea. Lakeview East Chamber of Commerce. I don't see Maureen. Lakeview East Co-op, John's not going to be here. Lakeview Towers, Stephen Samoa. Magnolia Malden, Kathy Cook.
Here.
Hello, Kathy.
Hello.
North Ulster Business Alliance.
Hello.
Hi, Mark. Nuna, is James Sokola here? I don't see him. One North Side, is Noah here? Our real estate representative, Mark Zipper. Where are you, Mark? You were here a minute ago. Oh, there you are. Okay, you're on mute. I see you. Our retail representative, Luke, he didn't respond. I don't see him in here. Ruth Schreiman can't come. Our transportation representative, Chester, is
I'm here.
Hey, Chester. Triangle Neighbors, John. Okay, he's not here. That's also one of our new, they're not a newly formed organization, but they newly joined the 46th Ward due to boundary changes with East Lakeview Neighbors. Truman Square Neighbors, Tonya.
District.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Tonya.
Hi.
Yeah, they did their own redistricting. There was Belmont Harbor Neighbors wasn't actually functioning anymore. And so East Lakeview Neighbors and Triangle Neighbors decided to split their area. So that's how that happened. UCC, Patrick Waters. You're here, right? Yep, I see you. Okay. Uptown United, Martin. Don't see him here. Okay, we're done with the roll call.
Thank you, Tressa. Howard Brown is an LGBTQ organization that provides research and education and services to promote health and wellness. Their services include both a health and research center and the Broadway Youth Center that's on the 4,000 block of Broadway, which will be moving to the 1,000 block of Irving Park Road, probably next year or so. They did their groundbreaking. So today we're joined by David Munyar. David and I have known each other for over 30 years. He was at AIDS Foundation Chicago. I was at Travelers Under Crusade, which is now Heart and Alliance. I worked a lot with people who had HIV, who were experiencing homelessness and mental illness, and that's how I got to know David. Also joining him is Frankie Reynolds, Bill Jor, and Tyler Manick, the attorney. So I'll now give the floor over to Howard Brown to present their proposal.
Thank you, Alderman. Thank you, neighbors. I'm happy to share with you an update on what we've been working on in terms of our clinic on Halsted. I'm especially pleased to present to you as a resident of the 46th Ward and also work in the 46th Ward. So the presentation that you received today will describe our proposal to move our Halsted clinic that's currently at Melrose and Halsted up to a new location that we've scouted at Cornelia and Halsted. And the request is for upzoning to meet the needs of our growing practice in Lakeview. We currently serve about 6,000 patients at the Halsted Clinic at the current location at Melrose, and we are completely out of space. Our providers there are unable to accept any new patients, and because of the space limitations at that location, which we lease, we're unable to provide a full continuum of care. So our proposal to move the clinic includes an expansion of our primary care practice to accommodate additional patients, enough space for a walk-in sexual and reproductive health clinic to provide STI and HIV screening services and prevention services like PAP and PrEP. We intend to bring behavioral health, which is an important integrated service, part of our continuum, to the new location. We're very excited to also propose, as part of the proposal, add a dental clinic on the north side. We have a dental practice in our Inglewood clinic, which has been very successful, and there's a lot of demand for dental services on the north side. For those of you, heard from the alderman, Howard Brown was started in 1974 as an LGBT clinic for focusing on sexual transmitted diseases and counseling. And we're a full service, federally qualified health center that continues to provide services to the LGBT community, but also are providing a whole range of outpatients, ambulatory medical care in 8 communities. So we are in 3 communities on the south side, in Hyde Park, in Inglewood, and back of the yards, and then on the northwest side in Humboldt Park, and then on the north side we're in Lakeview, Uptown, Edgewater, and Rogers Park. In total, we're serving about 30,000 patients and clients. And this proposal to move our clinic, which we've been working on for a couple years, comes on the heels of the pandemic that we're so actively working to respond to. And because of our depth of experience in HIV and viral infectious disease control, Howard Brown is very active citywide in the pandemic response. So we're doing COVID screening at 8 locations, 3 on the north side, 2 on the west side, 3 on the south side, including a mobile van. And in total, we've screened about 25,000 Chicagoans for coronavirus infection and diagnosed about 3,000. We also were the very first organization in Illinois to start contact tracing for individuals with COVID, and really leveraged our deep experience with contact tracing in sexually transmitted diseases and HIV to COVID. We've been also very active connecting individuals we talk to in screening, contact tracing, to essential services to address the economic hardships caused by the pandemic. And we're encountering hundreds of patients that have are food insecure and don't have enough resources to put food on the table, have problems meeting their rent, transportation, and other needs, including behavioral health. This is actually a really elegant moment to think about expanding our footprint in Lakeview, our current location at Halsted and Melrose. The majority of our patients live in a 1-mile radius and reach us by by walking, though we will be proposing some limited parking, but it's very much a community clinic. And that neighborhood is, we're drawing many patients from that clinic and other clinics from the Lakeview neighborhood. Our proposal, we were at a proposal before COVID hit, and that definitely put a wrinkle in our plans to move this forward, but we're elated that we're able to present it with you today. We originally proposed a much larger building and met with the immediate neighbors. In total, we've had 7 separate community meetings and have redrawn the building with our architects at Architrave 3 times. And the most significant change that we've made, which we'll describe when we show you the renderings, is agreed with neighbors to reduce the maximum height of the building, lowering our plans by 10 feet and figuring out a way to meet our space needs with 1 less floor. So we'd originally proposed 6 floors, and now we're proposing to go up to 5 floors. We are under contract to acquire the land, and our closing is dependent on the rezoning decision. And that's tied to both our needs for the practice and the needs of the agency, projecting out the kinds of encounters that we anticipate in the next 10 years, as well as the financing for the building. So that's kind of a broad overview of Howard Brown. We are really part of the safety net. And I'll say that the last thing I'll say is just a little bit about who accesses care at Howard Brown. So of the 30,000 patients and clients, about 40 to 45% of our patients have private commercial insurance. About 30 or 35% have Medicaid or a public payer that helps them with their healthcare needs. About 10% are uninsured and on accessing our sliding scale. And then another 10 are on self-pay. And many of those are also individuals that end up utilizing our charity care services. So it's a really broad mix of individuals who are insured and uninsured, and all parts of the city, which is really a beautiful thing. And also LGBT community members, as well as allies and neighbors. So with that, I will turn it over to Frankie, who will share with you a presentation with our architects about the renderings.
I also want to add that the thing that excites me the most is the dental clinic. For people with HIV, infections can be very detrimental. Dental clinics that accept Medicaid right now, all they do is provide, they do tooth extractions and they provide false teeth. That's about it. So to find a dental clinic that provides a broader range of services for people in need is extraordinarily rare. I have a good friend with HIV. He's been on a waiting list for over a year to get dental health care that he needs. So it's just extraordinarily hard to come by. I only know of 2 other dental clinics that accept Medicaid and go well beyond what Medicaid only offers on the north side of the city.
Thank you for mentioning it, Alderman. I will say in the last 6 months, as well with the pandemic, some of the, we've seen a tremendous number of patients, both with COVID, needing COVID assistance in terms of testing or other forms of assistance, as well as other patients. But a big part of the clientele that we've seen in the last 6 months includes individuals who've been affected by the economic fallout of COVID, including individuals that work at the entertainment establishments along Halsted and in the neighborhood, waiters, bar backs, bartenders, and other people in the service economy that are really hard hit by this pandemic. And they've turned to Howard Brown, and we've been grateful. We're glad we've been able to be there for them. Frankie, want to take over?
Great, thanks, David. I'm going to share my screen now. Please let me know if at any point my audio cuts out. I've experienced that a little bit on the hearing end. So I'm not sure if that's my internet or other folks' internet. So let me know if at any point my audio cuts out, and I'll call. I'm going to share my screen now. Can folks see the screen?
Mhm.
Great, thanks. Always gotta double check. So I'll run through kind of the renderings as well as some of the plans, and then kind of summarize all the changes that we've made through these different meetings that David spoke about. So the rendering on the left is the originally proposed structure, and which was originally about 88,000 square feet, which was a building that we, that size building was a building that we kind of intentionally sought out to meet a known space need, and an assessment we did based on medical demand for medical services and then unmet need for dental services, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Currently, the proposed building is on the right, and as David said, the most significant change is that reduction of a floor coming down from 6 stories to 5 stories. In order to kind of better meet or better fit in with the neighborhood and meet kind of the community and immediate neighbors' requests as much as we could. This is just a close-up building of our currently proposed building. We would have this kind of main entrance. We're really excited to be back on Halsted Street, Howard Brown's first location, as some people may have remember. A little bit before my time, but Howard Brown's first location was on Halsted Street, and we're really excited to be back on that strip. It provides, just as an LGBTQ organization, to have that kind of corner will be really exciting. This is looking southeast on Halsted, so you have Las Manitas for comparison. This is just a street level view. One of the pieces of feedback that was given at one of our original community meetings was to lighten up the ground level and make sure that it will be kind of like an active use space like much of Halsted is or would be in a time without COVID or in a time after COVID. This view is from eye level across Halsted, and this is important because part of the request was to have, a building that was closer to 4 stories. And while we aren't able to fit all the needed programming in a building that's 4 stories, we did also increase the setbacks along Halsted as well as Cornelia significantly, so that from eye level on Halsted, the 5th floor is almost totally obscured, giving more of a 4-story structure on the actual street level. So this is the building from, I think it's from somebody that's about 6 foot tall, looking up at the building on the sidewalk. And then this is just looking north on Halsted. And part of this is, we did hear that there were some requests to fit more into the structure and of the surrounding kind of environment. And so this particular vantage point is to highlight, we tried to mirror some of the architecture of the building across the street, having that kind of significant setback on that 5th floor, and really minimizing both on Halsted and Cornelia, the frontage that was that street side frontage being 4 stories and having that 5th story setback. The setback on both of those sides is 14 feet, I believe. I'm going to go through the plans. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because they're somewhat technical. But I also, if you have questions, we can review them during the Q&A. So this, as I said, the corner entrance, we plan on having our main entrance. There's parking entrance off of Cornelia. Between the building directly to the east at its point that is closest to our building, there's a 5-foot setback towards the start of our building. Loading and trash is in the back. Over here, we don't come all the way up to that alley line because there's a ComEd easement, so we are set back from that alley line slightly. And then we have 2 entrances for the potential retail spaces that right now are split up into 4, but could be, 1 tenant or a couple tenants. This is just the parking floor. We have 27 parking spaces as well as bike parking. As David said, it's a transit-oriented development, so we aren't required to have parking, but we of course want to have some for accessibility needs of our patients. Right now, the vast majority of our patients that access both our Halsted and our Sheridan Clinic access it either through walking or through public transportation. This is just the 1st floor, so we have that kind of lobby, general reception area, and then those retail units that I described before. And then this is a picture of the 2nd floor, but also mirrors the 2 floors above it. So then there's this lobby reception area. And then this is that 4th floor. So that you have that significant balcony. A question that's come up in the past is, will the balcony be used? What would the use of the balcony would be? And it's really meant for our staff to be able to enjoy some outdoor space, as well as to minimize kind of the overall impact of the building, and then have that added benefit of just greenery space for our staff to be able to enjoy. This is just the north elevation. Again, this is the building across the street, as well as this is the building immediately to the east. The height of the building, if you go including all of the mechanicals on top of the building, is 70 feet. To the joist is 67 feet. Just the frontage. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about intended use for the building, because as we've talked about in the past, really the size of the building has been driven by the use of the building and our need to kind of meet this unmet need for our north side clinics, as well as for the delivery of dental services. So we do expect to have walk-in sexual and reproductive health clinic on this at this building. Right now, the closest one is at our Sheridan location, where the wait can be up to 4 hours in order to be seen. We're also excited about being on Halsted because right now our outreach and sexual and reproductive health teams do a lot of work in a lot of bars, and well, when they would be operational in non-COVID times, in other places. And so it's nice to actually be, where folks are going out and where folks can come and access us kind of readily available. We also will expand primary care to meet the needs of that Halsted clinic, which is one of our fastest growing clinics, as David said, and has a really robust primary care program already and is ever growing. Right now, we're almost at capacity. Most panels are full, but there are really consistently patients wanting to seek and establish primary care there. And then this dental clinic, as our dental clinic at 63rd does, we will be seeing both pediatric and adult patients, and dental health, as Alderman Kappelman so kindly commented on, is really important for all patients, but it's particularly our patients with Medicaid and patients who are living with HIV. And patients living with diabetes. It's a really integral part of that care, and it's really hard to get folks access to that care, and access to that care in a way that's humane, where they don't just pull all of the teeth that have a cavity. And so this is something that we currently have on the south side. It's been a huge demand on the north side that we haven't been able to meet. So we're really excited to bring this offering to the north side, and it's in a place that's fairly centrally located for folks to access. Also on site, we'll have some administrative offices that are essential to operating a building of this size, as well as social services and behavioral health. It's really important for our care model to have these things on site and in one location. As soon as somebody leaves the doors, they're less likely to kind of seek those supportive care offerings that they might need. If something's on site where they can go just to another floor, if we can create that warm handoff, folks are much more likely to access behavioral health services, psychiatry, or supportive services offered through social services. Some examples of some of our social services that we offer would be some of the rental assistance and financial assistance that David was talking about that we currently do for some folks that have been impacted by COVID, as well as our Empower program, which specifically responds to victims, survivors of sexual violence, specifically LGBTQ survivors of sexual violence who don't necessarily want to access care at a hospital, for example. So again, really would benefit to have this kind of on the strip where there is so much nightlife activity and having those services, available. And then lastly, but I want to talk about our pharmacy. So most of our sites do have an embedded pharmacy, and that will take up at least a minimum of 2,000 square feet of the retail space on the first floor. We need to have a pharmacy on site in order to be able to serve our patients best. Our pharmacists, the pharmacists that we have in our embedded pharmacies, are not only familiar with care for people living with HIV, but also with care for trans and gender nonconforming individuals, and just navigating access to medications. We do have access to some abilities to make medications more affordable for folks that are uninsured or underinsured. Some insurance just doesn't cover medication in the way that, folks will need. And so we have abilities to kind of help bridge those gaps, but in our embedded pharmacies. And so that's part of the reason why we have these embedded pharmacies. And it also just creates for better care, because the pharmacist can collaborate with the physician to make sure that the patient understands the medications that they're getting, as well as if any changes need to be made. And I wanted to talk a little bit about intended use and what the scope of this practice might be. And so I talked about kind of projected annual encounters for each of these different service lines, and this is based on the kind of the amount of services that similar offerings are providing at other locations. And so that's about 65,000 annual encounters a year. And I just wanted to stress how each component of this structure provides one of those services. This will likely not be 65,000 individual people, but those folks that access multiple services within our facility likely won't access those services elsewhere if they can't get them within that facility. And so having that holistic care model, having that all on site for these folks is really important to being able to kind of achieve that mission of eliminating health disparities and promoting health and wellness. And so when we talk about the volume of the building, this is kind of, I just want to talk a little bit about what that will actually serve. And then just going over kind of to come back around what a request is. So originally proposed building was about 88,000 square feet. We're asking for a C1-5 zoning at 89,000 square feet with a max of 89,000 square feet. However, we are going in for a type 1 application. So we or anyone else, if someone else came after us, would be limited to what we're submitting. And what we're submitting is 71,000 square feet total building volume, and the height that's on the application goes to that joist. So it's 67 feet is the height for the building that we're submitting, and we or anyone else would be limited to that height. In context of current zoning would allow the building about 40,000 square feet, which is obviously significantly less than the volume that we're trying to achieve to serve our patients, and a height of 55 feet with a variance. And I just wanted to list C1-3 zoning because it's come up a couple times. So C1-3 zoning does have a max height of 75 feet. So we have met that height requirement, but our volume, we are unable to meet our programmatic need within that volume requirement. So we did hear the need to kind of mirror that -3 requirement and have met that height requirement, but aren't able to meet the need of our program within the volume requirement. And then just to close, for our kind of the community requested design changes that we've been able to act on the first floor, we added significant glass to highlight the commercial spaces and lighten the first floor. The commercial spaces will either be used and rented out to an external tenant or used by Howard Brown as an awning was added to make the building a little more approachable and human scale from that first floor. We removed the 6th floor and decreased the overall height by 10 feet and reduced the building by 13,000 square feet, or over 13,000 square feet. And so that was, a hit to the program. We were able to kind of determine how to move forward without having that 13,000 square feet, but that's a reduction in the total volume. And then we increased the 5th floor setback from 9 feet to 14 feet on both sides. So both reducing the impact of the building from a street level, as well as the impact of the building if you're just looking at it from one of the adjacent buildings. And then we eliminated the outdoor canopy. There was an outdoor canopy on that 5th floor, and that's also to minimize overall building impact. And then we changed the color of the brick to a deeper red to better match kind of Chicago brick, and changed the color of the brick to match the neighborhood as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's, and that is my presentation. I'll just bring it back to some slides, and I think that we can go for questions, Kylie.
Yes. I also wanted to add that because of the stigma of people needing mental health care, it's very crucial that we provide the mental health care in a facility where they also provide health care. It just gets rid of some of the stigma. We know that a lot of people with mental illness don't like going to mental health clinics. So that's why the city is really transitioning to fairly qualified health centers. That's where a person can get their entire care, everything met at one facility. And we find that people are much more willing to step up and get the health care they need if they can also get their mental health there at the same time, and dental care too. So with that, opening it up to the members of the zoning committee for questions.
Are we allowed to speak, or do you have a type of question?
If you could please chat the group to be put on the list for questions. So I already have a few members.
Where do I do that?
Yeah, of course. On the bottom of your screen, there will be a chat bubble for a chat icon. And I apologize, I cannot see you speaking right now. You can also tell me your name right now if it's easier, and I can add you to the list.
It's Kurt. Banke.
Thank you very much. So first up, we have Chelsea Biggs.
Everybody. First, I want to thank Frankie and David for speaking. I had the pleasure of working with Howard Brown Health, and more specifically BYC, as a member of the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless Youth Committee. And I know you guys do amazing work and you have amazing staff. The question I had was sort of big picture and why you chose the location that you chose. My concern and concern of folks in our block club is just surrounding business displacement. And we have a large empty professional space next to Weiss Hospital. And I'm sure it's too late to convince you to move towards us, but so anyway, really the question is just around choice of location.
Thank you, Chelsea. We were trying to stay in proximity to our current practice. That's on Melrose and Halsted. We want to stay on the Halsted Strip because many of our patients work, play, or live in that immediate area. And we also, as a, founded as an LGBT organization, wanted to honor that history as the Halsted has become the historic entertainment corridor for the LGBT community. And lastly, the in scouting for available locations that we might acquire, this was the only one that was large enough to meet our needs, and also the current owners who very recently closed their business at the corner of Cornelius and Halsted at Little Jim's. That was a historic meeting place and destination for members of the LGBT community. So we found that this was also an elegant way of honoring that history by proposing to bring services to that corner where previously there was a lot of organizing and you know, it was a bar previously, but also a historic and important one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mark Zipper.
Hi, wondering what the surrounding neighbors have. I know this plan has been revised, but where the surrounding neighbors' feeling is on the building right now.
I don't know who wants to take that. We've we were at the Triangle meeting last week, and there were concerns from the immediate neighbors, but Triangle neighbors approved the proposal. Pivotal to securing approval was our plans to reduce the building maximum height. I can say that there still are some concerns I'm sure will be voiced tonight. But we've been we've listened to all the concerns, we've carefully logged them, we've revised the proposal 3 times. We're trying to meet several demands. I think that the immediate neighbors, depends on whether they're east or west or north or south of us, have their own opinions, obviously, and they'll share them tonight. But we also have a lot of supporters among our patients and clients and other constituents. I don't know if Alderman or anyone else wants to comment on that.
I can say that when Triangle neighbors met with them in the first couple of meetings, they had some requirements. The number 1 requirement was the height. They wanted to remove a floor and to see if they could move some of their services on the first floor. Just because of the height, that was their big concern. And they followed through with that. They also addressed some of the concerns about the architecture. And I think there was some concerns about the alley access that was also addressed.
Alderman, we also, Stu Zirin from Triangle Neighbors, we also brought up the fact that the space looked extremely institutional from the front. And we asked that they do something in terms of more glass. And we've had them back and they've made some changes. So we signed off on, they've done everything we asked for, so we signed off on that.
Okay, thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Stu. Anything else you want to add, Stu, to what's been said already?
You know, I think that I've been through a lot of these meetings where people come and they give presentation to us. Some will make changes, some will not. Some are easy to work with. They've been very, very accommodating. It's such a good and worthwhile cause that we're extremely pleased to support it. And when you look at the actual zoning of what they're asking for in terms of the height, it's not that much difference. It's more volume, and that's what they need to make it work. And we have them go through and back and make those changes. And I think from Triangle's standpoint, they've been extremely accommodating to us. And I think also from North Halsted, I think somebody could speak about the business community side of it. But we're very pleased, and we think it'd be a really good neighbor. So that's why we gave the support. I understand that there's always issues with the people that live directly across or next, but we have to look at the whole entire community and the impact that it's going to do for North Halsted Street and the neighbors around. That's all I have to add.
And I know North Halsted Merchant Association also weighed in on this.
And I don't know if you can hear me or not. We very much are in support of this. We actually wrote early on in the process, and we can speak to the reality of the importance of what it is that the Howard Brown has provided to our community. In this crisis, it's been unimaginable. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of people I've sent there. I've sent friends of mine who are not members of our community to Howard Brown because they were the most reliable healthcare service to provide COVID testing and available resources, and who ultimately donated to the organization because of their incredible support for Chicago. So I am thrilled about it. But prior to this, we were already doing fundraisers in my business to raise money for the dental clinic because of what I recognize, similar to the alderman, with regards to the important need for dental services and what has been ignored and unavailable. So I'm ecstatic. And in terms of its fit in the community, I recognize that some people have concerns about having additional tall buildings in the neighborhood. However, if you look across the street and if you look at our block and the evolution that's occurred as you move north, the reality is that these buildings do exist. And I think that what they did in terms of accommodating requests has been awesome. As Stu outlined, there have been multiple meetings and multiple requests, and I think they have been responsive, and I think they have been attempting to be a good member of the community, as they always have been. And I think that's amazing. So I personally would be thrilled, because I know right now we do testing inside of one of my businesses for Howard Brown because they don't have the availability that they need for our community. And I know that even for this coming fall, we're working with Howard Brown to create a vaccination program to provide for flu viruses, or the flu vaccine to try to stop the virus. These things should be available inside of an appropriate medical community facility, and this is what they're creating. And I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to our neighborhood and further strengthen North Halsted for the future.
I also want to add that, I mean, a lot of people have my cell phone number, and I once had a text from someone at around 11:30 at night where he talked about wanting to commit suicide, which frightened me. And having suicide in my own family, I ended up calling 911. There was the police came out to address the situation, and I later followed up with him and referred him to Howard Brown, where he got some counseling that saved his life. So I think the world of Howard Brown, just for that one incident alone, was really helped me convince.
Alderman, I couldn't agree with you more, because I have sent so many employees in the 18 years that I've owned a business now on Halsted. I cannot tell you the number of people who Howard Brown has stepped in to assist, to really redirect, to provide them a future. And I think that they deserve to be a continued presence and a stronger presence in our community. And I think this is an important addition, and I'm hopeful that everybody will support it.
And with the, if I could just add one more thing, Mark, with the Center in Halsted, with the senior living, and now with Howard Brown taking the space, you know, the geographic history that our neighborhood has is just continued on with this as another piece in the puzzle of the mall. And although they're asking for some considerations, what they bring back is far more than they're asking for.
No doubt, and what they've given so far is far more than you could normally expect necessarily. And as the alderman said, we've all looked to them at various points, and I don't know how many people deal with people who don't have health insurance, who have pre-existing medical conditions, and the challenges that they face. And I cannot begin to imagine our world without Howard Brown, and I'm excited about the idea of our world with a stronger Howard Brown presence. So for me, this is probably one of the most exciting developments that I've seen for North Halsted in a very long time. By the way, I'm not just speaking for me personally. I just want to make sure it's clear that I'm speaking on behalf of the North Halsted Chamber, our business alliance. which when we discussed this was probably one of the most exciting things, because we all deal with employees, with patrons, with the public, and we recognize the role that Howard Brown has played in our community, amongst our businesses, and for the future. So again, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Next, we have Kurt Banke.
Hi, how are all of you? I'm not sure if I have my video working or not. One, I wanted to just say I think this is an amazing site for them. I think that the continued anchoring of Holstead Street with these types of services and the community is just outstanding. I was very pleased to hear that this facility was coming to this location. I heard that the building had been taller and it had been lowered to this datum line, and it's consistent, I think, more with the architecture from a massing perspective in the neighborhood. My comments that I have about the building are more architectural. If you can humor me for a second, I think that the buildings that have been built in Wrigley are sort of atrocious suburban new buildings that don't really speak to the community. And there's a building at Sheridan and Broadway that I think once it was done was less of an architectural attribute to our neighborhood. And I think when I look at this building, I see similar attributes to that building at Sheridan and Broadway. And it seems, although I appreciate the class,
he's one of those curmudgeons.
why don't you let me finish? And I didn't pass any judgment on any of you with anything that you had said. So how about some respect? What I think is probably been said, that this glass corner is great, but I don't know what this looks like when it goes to Cornelia, to the adjacent buildings and residential properties along Cornelia. And that facade maybe seems more appropriate for Halsted Street, and we don't see the full length of the facade here on Cornelia. But I'm wondering how this building, as it goes north, it turns into a more brick building and ties into maybe the community. But as it goes to the east, what is it doing? Okay, see, I wasn't able to see this, so I wanted to ask for this to have it without snarky comments from people. So thank you for showing this, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great feedback from people. Out of respect for everyone's time, I want to make sure we focus on questions to ensure we include as many questions as possible about this.
And next, we have Patrick Nagel.
Hi, I also agree that I think this is a worthwhile project and something that'll be a benefit to the community. I did have one question about the commercial space. Will that be used for public use, or does Howard Brown reserve the right to use that for private services? It seemed unclear from the presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. Our intention is to lease those spaces to tenants. And originally pre-COVID, when we were meeting with community, there was a lot of interest in retaining commercial activity on the strip, and particularly in this corner with restaurants or amenities. We are definitely committed to working to fill those with neighborhood activities that people need, like seeing if the taco place will come back. We know that there are a lot of, post-COVID, there's a lot of storefronts that have not been able to return. We're very hopeful that we'll have tenants in these spaces, in part because we'll have employees and patients coming to the destination throughout the day. Our own employees will need places for lunch and their own amenities. As you heard, we'll be scouting for a pharmacy partner for at least one of the spaces. And worst case scenario, we have our own social enterprise business, a resale store called Brown Elephant. So we've committed that the storefronts will not be empty, but it is our first hope that they be leased and helping offset the cost of the project.
Thank you very much. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Next, Maureen Martino.
Can you guys hear me now? I'm sorry, I'm not at home. So I had a question in regards to not only security, because I don't know what your operating hours are, but you know, I kind of piggyback on what Sue has said too about the facade of the building and fitting in on Halsted Street, but also with lighting and security on off hours. We know that as a district as a whole, I don't know, I'm the director of the Chamber of Commerce for Lakeview East, and security has been a huge issue for every business. And so I just want to make sure that whatever we do is going to be, that is part of the operation plan. And also, as you talk about a tenant on the first floor, have you ever considered doing something like Inspiration Cafe, where some of the money goes back to Howard Brown? Sorry for the noise. I'm actually outside right now.
Thanks, Maureen. So I can address your questions. They are operational and not really germane to the zoning question. But if you look at our current location at Melrose and Halsted, we've had 0 safety issues at that location. That location, most people don't even know we're there. It's best known for its beautiful mural on the Melrose side. And we have equipped that location with security cameras. We have security staff that walks the perimeter of the buildings and ensure that there are no activities or nothing, no problems that we should be monitoring. We our hours of operation pre-COVID were 9 to 7 Monday through Thursday, and Saturday. With COVID, we've been closing at 5. We will aspire, once we're out of the pandemic, to be back to kind of a 9 to 7 schedule, but nothing late in the evening, and likely Saturdays, but not Sundays. And so our experience at our current location is, this is a larger plan than what we're doing currently at Melrose and Halsted, but we don't anticipate, to see any material change in the kind of patterns in terms of use or security. We just know it's going to be a bigger operation for us to monitor, and we'll accommodate for that in our operating plans. Once we're past our current, just so you're aware, we're currently requesting this rezoning. We need to finalize the acquisition of the land and then do actually the complete renderings of the 5-floor architectural plan, and then permitting and bidding for general contractors. So we're probably 1.5 years out before we can actually break ground. So many of the specifics about the building's architectural elements inside the building, as well as the operational plan, are still being laid once we get kind of to that point in the project.
Anything that you can do with lighting is always helpful, especially being in a nighttime district, so that, we're having some of these issues as different nightlife places come into the district, over even on Clark Street, that we are asking them to kind of put lighting up, make it feel like you're a fabric of the streetscape. And I think that would help along. And I do think that having some kind of restaurant or something that gives back to Howard Brown on the first floor might be a good idea to kind of consider. I'm just saying, I think Howard Brown, just like everybody kind of expressed, I've been the executive director for 18 years, just like Mark Lieberson's been in 18 years in the community. I lived in Lakeview in '88. I see these changes. I know how important Howard Brown has been to the community and how strong you are for us. And I appreciate everything you guys do. And we have the same conversation as a chamber with everybody that comes in as a business about operations with security, because of what is happening, especially nowadays, and making sure that it's not anything to do with your clients or anything that you're doing. It's just part of the fabric of what's happening in the world we live in right now, is that we all have to do what we can to be part of the solutions of helping combat things that might happen late at night, and making sure the right lighting is there, and be kind of proactive on that.
Thanks, Maureen. Yeah, we will definitely look at all those options. We currently secure the parking lot behind our current location at Melrose and Halsted, that where we've installed lighting and other features to make sure it's secure. Right now we have tents for COVID screening that we've been securing throughout the pandemic. And so we'll definitely look at lighting options. We do have a social enterprise, a brown elephant, that we may bring to the tenants if we don't find other tenants. I mean, our first hope is to find commercial tenants to help us offset some of the cost of bringing this project to life. But the brown elephant was started on Halsted, and we're a few years out, so it's hard to predict. But we always have that option to bring it back. We are in Lakeview already at Lincoln and Southport, but this would be a fantastic location for it as well. So that option is definitely on the table.
Next, we have Mark Liberson.
And I apologize for being back, but I did want to refer back to what Maureen had said, and because I think Maureen raised a great point. We do worry about keeping our safe street and also having an active presence on the street. And I'm very excited actually that Howard Brown is now actually going to be part of the North Halsted board, because Dr. Robin Gay, who is the person who has worked with Howard Brown to create the dental program, has just been brought on as a member of the North Halsted board. So I think that will be a great contribution and also connection in terms of integrating Howard Brown further into our community as if they need further integration. But I think that would be that's going to be a welcome addition. But I do want to say that I think that it is important, and I hope, David, that as you're putting the plans together, that we have found that there is challenges when there are areas of our street that go dark at night. And so, for example, the fact that the taco place, and I am a small business fan, and I eat their tacos quite regularly, having those small businesses continue that are open late at night, I think benefits everyone. And I think that we should consider retaining the people who have been part of this community for so long. So I'd love to see that occur. And I don't know if that's a consideration for you. Is that something that even in terms of your planning that you're providing for, because you have much more complex ventilation system and setting it up to be able to provide for these small businesses to get easy access to rejoin the facade?
Yeah, thank you, Mark and Maureen. We are absolutely equipping those retail spaces to accommodate restaurants or other commercial activity. This is also not I think this is the zoning question, but I think as we get closer to breaking ground and having more specific renderings and plans, we're absolutely going to be leaning on our community members and sharing those. So this is not the end of feedback. I think we're definitely going to be talking to many stakeholders in the community about specifics of the design and the tenants and those pieces and the safety. We'd love to see some of the current tenants back. It's not entirely up to us. They also have choice, and we have to kind of figure out all the specifics. But we agree. We think it would be fantastic if some of those could come back. We want a lively environment for our staff and for our patients and for the community as well. Yeah.
And David, my impression is that demand is only going to increase for Howard Brown. I don't see it decreasing even with you increasing.
Absolutely. Well, we're
curious. No, I was just going to ask that I think that the later hours could be a benefit as well. But Howard Brown, while you have earlier hours now, you could potentially reach more people. And my business across the street is open late, and assuming that we'll be open in the future, that we would probably our clientele would benefit from having your services available even into the later night, and then that may be a connection into the community both for daytime and evening. I don't know if you've considered that or not.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we, for this project, because it's still a few years out because of COVID, everything has changed. But certainly in thinking about the thinking about our location at Melrose, we've also had similar observations where some of the outreach that we're doing at locations like Hydrate and some of the other venues we think could appropriately be done in clinic on the weekend evening. So, anything like that, we'll be talking very closely with the neighbors and the stakeholders like North Halstead Business Alliance. But that's a good idea. We definitely want to serve the community. So if there's an appetite for later hours, we certainly would be open to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Alex Wolking.
Hi, thank you so much for the very thorough presentation. I have been a Howard Brown primary care patient for the last 7 years, so I'm pleased to see that little space on Halstead could grow to something much larger. My question, number one, just briefly, I didn't see anything in the email, but what's the proposed length of construction, like 2 years or something?
I'm not sure yet. It's probably at least 12 months to 18 months, yeah.
Okay. My other question was more so along, if I remember correctly, I've actually got the Google Maps, the 3D here in front of me. I can't remember, is that intersection a stoplight or is that a stop sign?
It's a stop sign.
Okay. So has there been any, because obviously with more services, I would imagine there'd be more traffic, more people, all of that. Was there, I guess, is there any concern, or walk me through as far as traffic or anything on Cornelia there? Because I think Cornelia is a one-way going east. And with the proposed parking garage entrance on Cornelia, I just had a question if there was any concern around, if any of the neighbors anyway had any concern around traffic, or, well, and obviously not parking, but just traffic flow during the daytime. Assuming it wouldn't be too big of an issue just because, most people would be home by the time you guys are closing, but I just had a question about that.
Yeah, we don't anticipate there'll be a heavy volume of vehicular traffic. I mean, there is, we're expecting somewhere around 150 or 200 visits a day, but probably 60 to 80% of those on foot or CTA, and that kind of analysis is really based on our current patient base, where the vast majority are within a 1 mile radius, live within 1 mile of the current location. So we expect we'll be drawing heavily from people who are not driving vehicles. So we've made accommodations for some limited parking to address congestion, but we don't think we're going to have heavy, a high volume of drivers. We also think that actually the one-way will benefit, so that there's a one-way into the building if you're driving one-way out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Charles Ramsdell.
Oh, there we are. Okay, sorry about that. So I wouldn't mind seeing additional parking. It's a valid point with the size and breadth of the building that we're looking at. At that said, I think the height is perfectly fine. I think the design is perfectly fine. I am curious to know, of the services provided, what percentage of the other Howard Browns are you looking to pull from?
We are not really pulling from any of the other ones. I mean, we're actually having congestion at the other sites because we can't accommodate any new patients at the Melrose and Halstead location.
Right. So I had recently, as in day before yesterday, a COVID test in a tent behind the Sheridan location. Those people cannot weather the winter. Would you be able to augment the tent situation with this new facility?
I think, it's sort of a little bit of apples and oranges. I mean, the reason that we're in tents outside is because of we're trying to reduce exposure to COVID or other infectious elements inside the building. So there are kind of infectious disease protocols that make screening outside safer than indoors, and it's so that's a part of it. But if if you visited the Sheridan anytime this facility this week, anytime inside, we've been having lines outside the building to enforce social distancing. We're at maximum capacity inside the building and having to limit access, and that is actually a direct result of being unable to meet any additional volume at the Halsted site. So I think all of that is so it's a long way of saying sort of yes. I mean, I think having a bigger facility we can provide all of our services under one roof will give us greater flexibility. The COVID piece is just a little bit unusual just because we are intentionally outside for safety reasons.
Okay. Come January, I question the tent situation. That aside, in this new location, what happens to the existing businesses that are still thriving? Albeit.
So the building was put up for sale by the owner who closed his business, which was Little Gems. I mean, I think once we're not, if we acquire the building, we'll need at least a year of planning. So we'll give businesses ample notice before we're ready to demolish. We're not going to demolish anything until we're ready to start construction. So we're at least a year and a half out. And all of the businesses have been, when the building was put up for sale, all of the businesses were put on month-to-month leases. So they've been aware for well over a year that they may need to relocate permanently or temporarily. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're also going to add that typically we work with the local chambers who will also assist these businesses to relocate.
Okay.
And just to mention, what's interesting is that the owner of the property ended up buying the businesses as they went out. He just took over the lease. He took over Taverna. He took over Little Gyms, Big Gyms, and that's what he did.
Understood. Okay, so it's a single holdings almost.
Almost. There's a few little like the burrito place and things, but he bought the Ram. He bought all those things. He just like forced people out. So it's kind of a good play that this is coming in.
Okay. I think this is a net positive for everything, honestly.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last committee member that is speaking, we have Chester with a quick update. Chester.
Yeah, my name is Chester Kropodlowski, and I'm represent the Lakeview Citizens Council on the North Lakeshore Drive Redefined to Drive Task Force. The task force will be having a public meeting regarding North Lakeshore Drive in end of September. And the meeting will involve the entirety of Lakeshore Drive from Grand Avenue to Hollywood. The meeting will be a virtual meeting at which there will be some presentations made along with exhibits posted. Again, it will be end of September, and the presentations and the exhibits will be available to review and comment on for about a month. So that's going to be coming down the way. Again, the North Lakeshore Drive project is supposed to have phase one plans in place by 2022. So some decisions are being made and moving along. I have one particular concern that there's some discussion about bus lanes on North Lakeshore Drive in various configurations. And I've come to the conclusion that bus lanes in some instances are a politically correct thing to support, but they may not be the best thing for our roadways. For example, on Lakeshore Drive, all the buses basically use Lakeshore Drive during 5 hours of the day. During the rest of the day, there's no buses. So it's if we end up losing a lane of Lakeshore Drive for a bus lane, including the ability to have trees in the median, I'm not sure that's a good trade-off. So anyway, you'll have a chance to review what's on the table, make comments on it at the public meeting again in September. And Lakeview Citizens Council is working with the 44th and 46th Ward and our colleagues at East Lakeview neighbors to make sure everybody knows about the meeting and we'll have a chance to review and discuss the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chester. Alderman Kappelman.
I also want to especially thank Chester. He's our transportation representative, but he used to work for the city, for the Department of Transportation. I mean, he is the expert that knows all about traffic and transportation. So his expertise is greatly appreciated for our 46 Ward Zoning Development Committee. We're extraordinarily lucky to have him. So now we'll take questions from our attendees. Reminder to please click the raise your hand button if you have any questions. Kylie will then call on you when it's your turn to speak. And when you're called on, you'll be able to click the unmute on your screen. If you have any technology questions, you can write them in the Q&A box. So out of respect for everyone's time and to ensure that we get to as many questions as possible, please make sure that you stick to short and direct questions.
Thank you, Alderman. First, we have Lewis Harris. And Lewis, you should be able to speak. Great.
Thank you so much, everyone. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but one thing we have not seen with this proposal, and I'm puzzled that you're going to vote tonight because we haven't seen the rear of it. And the reason why I asked for that is because my building is due east of it, north of it on Brompton. And, you know, the previous rear was on the other proposals, but we don't have one here. So my question is it much different and than what was originally proposed? And are you all going to vote before you've seen the rear, the whole building? That's one question. And then the other one is, why does this 5-story building so much taller than the one across the street? So those are the two questions I have.
I might ask Tyler to take the second question, and then we can look. We have shown the rear rendering. We'll look and see if we can find that. Tyler, are you on?
Yes, I am, David. The question about the comparison of the height, I believe, to the building to the west. I think that building is roughly, I mean, that's a 5-story building, and that's got to be around 55 to 57 feet. We're proposing 67, so it's not a significant difference between the two buildings.
And Tyler, if I understand correctly, the big difference has to do with the requirements for height for commercial versus residential.
Correct. So the floor to the ceiling heights, we're an all commercial building, so we have to have a higher floor to the ceiling height. They have 5 stories of residential or 4 stories of residential, and they're allowed to only have 10 feet in height, while we have to be 13.
Right.
Next, we have Michael Rafferty.
Hi, this is Mike Rafferty. I'm the Triangle Secretary, the Lakeview Citizens Council Secretary, and a Commissioner on the Halsted SSA. I've been a major supporter of Howard Brown since at least 2002, donating a total of almost $19,000 cumulatively. I love Howard Brown. I've been a supporter and client for decades. I strongly support Howard Brown on Halsted at this site, within or near the existing zoning. However, I've lived across the street from the proposed project since 2003. The nearby blocks on Halsted are generally zoned as C12, with a few exceptions built within C12 standards. Howard Brown is requesting a 2-step upzoning, not just one. They proposed a 67-foot tall building, which is about 10 feet taller than 800 Cornelia across the street, and much taller than anything else along Halsted. This would be a full story taller, but they have 14-foot floors, as the previous person just pointed out. There's a lot of open retail space in Halsted. We don't need more retail space. They could use that ground floor retail space for their clinic or office needs and reduce the building by 1 floor, bringing it into C13 zoning compliance. The building would be big enough if they do not rent out the retail space. If Howard Brown must have more space, This may not be the right location for them, but I want them here. I really do, within the existing zoning. So my question to the alderman is only this. Why do we have zoning if we routinely change the zoning? And why wouldn't every other property owner nearby then use this as precedent to upzone their own property even higher?
Well, my answer is if we took that approach, we would eliminate the zoning committee from the city of Chicago. But we don't do that. The city is constantly changing, but I have a process in place where I get feedback from 30 different organizations across the ward, because we want to make sure that whatever happens doesn't go with what the alderman wants. That's a lot of power to give one person that I don't believe I should have. So I create a process that includes the feedback from 30 different organizations to provide their input. And you know, with any time we make a decision, there's always pros and cons. Nothing is ever absolutely good or bad. So I think this is a project that's worthwhile considering, and that's why I wanted to bring it before the 46 Ward Zoning Development Committee and actually let them give me the input I need to make a final decision.
Next, we have Alex Bjorvik.
Yes, I was just curious what Howard Brown has to sacrifice by losing an entire floor and the increased setback on the topmost floor.
Thanks, Alex. We lost about it's almost 20,000 square feet. So it was 13,000 square feet by lowering the building and then by expanding the setback. That's not reflected in the total volume because the balcony still counts towards that total volume, but it's definitely not space that we can use. The pieces that we're losing are offices, so staff offices. We are proposing fewer of those and a smaller set aside for social services and for and so really we kind of looked at all of our service lines and had to make sacrifices, but those were the biggest ones.
Next, we have Catherine Kerr. Catherine.
She on mute?
She's unmuted. Catherine, we're having trouble hearing you. We'll come back to you. So next we have Zach Garrar-Levine. Oh. No, Zach. Susan Friedman.
Unmute. Hi, my name is Susan Friedman, and I have a couple of questions. Could you please talk a little bit about the egress and ingress? It sounds to me like one of the ingresses or egresses is on Cornelia. Where's the other one? And is it set back? Is it at least 6 feet set back from the sidewalk? The next question I have is, could you talk a little bit about solar and greening? What did you do to incorporate solar and greening into the structure? And then last but not least, I just want to support the gentleman who says, if your clinic and your medical center that's what it is, the first floor should be used for it. And so if you need more space, maybe that's what you should be considering instead of wondering who's going to move in. So thank you.
Thank you. So your first question was about ingress, and egress. Our primary access to the building will be on that corner of Halsted and Cornelia. The parking garage and the biking will be on the Cornelia side. There'll be emergency doors by code that we've yet to design, but really the main entrance and exit of the building will be on Halsted and Cornelia. We are not proposing to be a LEED certified building, but we are incorporating many efficient elements into the building. A lot of that design goes into the next phase when we get into the specifics of the actual building renderings or instructions for the general contractor. So our renderings are specifically around the zoning requirements for city council, but we've not done the entire rendering of the interiors and the building materials and those pieces. And duly noted, thank you for your comment on commercial.
Catherine Kerr, trying your sound again. Catherine? You're unmuted if you want to try again, Catherine. Okay, Catherine, if you could chat your question to the Q&A box. Next, we have Zach Gerard-Levin. Zach.
Hi, can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Kylie, for unmuting me. And thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to ask a question. I'm curious when the alderman will be reading the letters that were submitted to him by the neighbors that he requested, and he committed to read to the entire group by email. More specifically, these letters that he will read to you now or in the next few minutes will share information from the local property owners that discuss some of the factors that you will be considering tonight when voting on this property, including whether the proposed rezoning is consistent with any plans for the area that have been adopted or approved by the city council, whether the proposed rezoning is appropriate because of significant changes due to public facility capacity or other rezonings or development trends in the local neighborhood, whether the proposed development is compatible with the character of the surrounding area in terms of uses, density, and building scale, and whether the proposed zoning classification is compatible with the surrounding zoning. And to reiterate what we heard from Mike Rafferty, this is a C12 and a C1-3 zoning neighborhood. So looking forward to hearing the letters read by Alderman Kappelman. Thank you.
Sure, I'll give my response to that. When I created the 46 Ward Zoning Development Committee, one of the things that I found was the secret to building community is to strengthen the neighborhood organizations. And so I purposely created it so that neighborhood organizations had strong input into zoning. I knew that would get their attention. And so I purposely created it so that in this particular situation with Triangle Neighbors, I wanted all the different groups that lived around Triangle Neighbors to provide their feedback to Triangle Neighbors. Triangle Neighbors would utilize that information to help make their decision. And then it goes, because it's a project that's over $10 million, I wanted to make sure, because it affects not just that one neighborhood organization. And I think I might be the only ward that takes a ward-wide process for projects over $10 million. Actually, I am the only ward that takes into process, utilizes the entire ward organizations for projects over $10 million. That gets the overall feedback so that they can look at the big picture. So I won't be reading the individual letters, but as we always do, we encourage those individual letters to go to your block club or your neighborhood organization who represents you in that vote. It's a representative model.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Platt.
Thank you, Kylie. I do want to mention, I also, I am one of the nearest neighbors, and I am the president of my HOA. And I do, Mr. Alderman, I do have an email from you confirming that you would read the letters to this group when the meeting was scheduled. So that's not my question, but I do want to say that I have an email dated July 28th from you saying that you would read them, which is just something I want to clarify. But for my question, I want to first reiterate that there is no doubt that the services that Howard Brown will be offering will be incredibly beneficial and impactful to the neighborhood. So our concerns relate specifically to the conformity of the building, not the services that will be offered. And if this is I hope I didn't even have to say this, but both of my siblings are a part of the LGBTQA community. And so this is a very near and dear, so the services are near and dear to my heart. So I want that to be stated clearly. But I do also think it's pretty unfair that a question was asked early on about the concerns from the nearest neighbors, and essentially a 10-minute smear campaign happened to anybody that might vocalize any concern about the building or question the scale and density of the building. So I understand what's needed. My question is, clearly lighting is important, as the atrium is 4 stories and there's a balcony included on the fifth floor, which I guess Frankie, you had in that table was about 12,000 square feet. So this is clearly an important factor in brightening up the building. So you can understand why a 70-foot wall on our neighborhood, on our building, which would directly block our direct sunlight and access to sunlight, would be of a concern. So the question is, why weren't any of the considerations, such as increasing that 5-foot setback on the east elevation, or potentially including the 14-foot setback on the 5th floor on the east side as well? Why weren't any of those taken into consideration for the east elevation, where it was taken into consideration on the Halsted side and the Cornelia side? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I can answer some of that. I did not make a promise that I would read letters to this group. It may have come from someone else, but it did not come directly from me. I can ask Tressa Fear about that. But I will also say that we had a number of different meetings with some of the building condo owners in the surrounding area, as well as the Triangle neighbors, and feedback was taken from them. There was considerable changes based specifically on feedback of the surrounding neighbors and Triangle neighbors. And that's why Triangle neighbors ultimately approved this project for them, because they believed that Howard Brown answered their questions. But I can ask Tressa about a promise to read the letters, but it didn't come from me.
So we have the.
Are you available?
Yeah, I'm here. I did not promise that either, if that's what you're asking me.
And I typically wouldn't make that promise. I really want that discussion to go to the neighborhood group, because it's that neighborhood group that is your representative for this project. So that it would go against the way I have run the Zoning Development Committee for the past 9 years.
And next we have Sarah Pugel. Sarah?
Hi, this is Sarah Pugel. I am one of the neighbors that would most directly be impacted by this. I know earlier you guys had a picture up on the screen of the building from the Halsted side, but I didn't see any of those similar pictures from straight on showing the Cornelia side. And I wanted to see if there was any of those images that everybody could see. If you could put those on the screen to see if those pictures were done, to see how this would impact the east side of the building. To that point, I also want to reiterate that I also was on that email that promised that these letters were going to be read during this meeting. I don't know if we can forward you that email. I understand maybe you didn't say that directly, but that was in your email response back to us.
Please do that, because I would not say that. And Tressa said she didn't, so I would like to see that email.
Okay. And I guess the whole thing is I understand that the triangle neighbors and all that, but we have expressed these concerns at the east side of the building. And, you know, the setbacks are being made to every other side of the building except for the east side of the building. And the east side of the building is the one that directly is in the most proximity to a residence, which is our residence, right? So that would be the most impacted. I understand. I know there was a comment made earlier about the big impact of, you know, versus the little impact. And we are fully in support of Howard Brown and all this, but it is going to impact our day-to-day lives as this is our home, and it was going to severely restrict any sun access. And we are going to be sitting essentially into for the 80-foot wall, and why those concerns were not made to have the setbacks or even an additional, right now, I believe there's 5 feet between us and the building that's proposed. And we had asked if there could be just an additional 5 feet to give us 10 feet in total, which we thought was, you know, a reasonable concern because it, you know, it will impact our day-to-day lives. And if that consideration was met, and so I guess my question is, was that even considered? And I guess my specific question is, what were the modifications made that were directly modified the east side of the building? I understand that you guys said that there was a lot of modifications made, but all those impacted the Halsted side, not necessarily the side that directly is against a resident.
Could David or Frankie answer that question, please?
Sure, I can try to take a crack at that. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, we did take into consideration that actually every single recommendation that was made. You know, obviously we can't please everyone, and we're trying to meet the demands of our service lines, our growth, and the acquisition. In terms of the accommodations for the east side, our biggest concession was lowering the building by you know, the 10 feet, so that it would be would not rise as high as originally proposed. We looked at things like setbacks around the whole building. One, it would dramatically reduce even more. It would cost more square footage, but importantly, it would also could invade the privacy on that side. So we opted against any setbacks on the east side. It wouldn't change kind of the shadows that would be cast. Our height is actually, even if we were at a -3, we would be at the same height. So in that perspective, even the -3 would get us at the same height that we're proposing for. The only difference is really the volume, the total volume, its total square footage of the building.
Thank you. Next, we have Carlton Daniels.
Thanks, Kylie, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to just briefly speak. I know I've had the opportunity to be on meetings with you, Mr. Alderman, the team from Howard Brown, David, Frankie, Tyler, and everybody. So again, thank you for the opportunity. I kind of actually just wanted to make a statement. I believe it was Mark who asked one of the very first questions, what do the neighbors think about the property? And to Nicole's point, that was just kind of brushed off afterwards. Oh, you know, the neighbors were fine. Well, the neighbors weren't actually fine. There were still some concerns. And I think one of our issues is that every time we try to raise concerns, a lot of the immediate pushback was, well, you just don't support Howard Brown. You just don't support Howard Brown. And it got to be very frustrating because, as every speaker has said tonight, Howard Brown is universally loved and appreciated in the community. So that's never been an issue about support for Howard Brown and wanting to make sure that they are successful. We just want to make sure that there's a building that fits the needs of the community. I mean, not just Howard Brown, not just bar owners, not just businesses, but the residents who live and pay taxes and, you know, have, you know, made this their home. So that's why we've tried to raise some concerns. I think some of the issues we've mentioned have been echoed in what has been discussed tonight. I know in letters to aldermen, we've talked about traffic. That was an issue that came up. But we really haven't addressed that. We've talked about some of the more aesthetic, obvious issues like height and setbacks. Yes, I think Howard Brown gets credit for reducing one floor of the building, but there are still some other design considerations that we have questions about as a community. We've heard a number of things that are they've been sort of non-negotiable points from Howard Brown, but we kind of wonder, well, if there was some wiggle room on those, could we come up with a building that might be maybe a little less massive, but would still get to where we need to be for all parties? I'll give you an example. The balcony. We've heard in several presentations that there'll be this great balcony for the use of the Howard Brown staff. At the end of the day, this is a workplace for the Howard Brown staff. And it's great that you would create a pleasant workplace, but meanwhile, the residents that live around who have existing balconies or decks, those would be minimized by this construction. So, we're trying to just have an equitable trade-off here as we consider what's being proposed for that space. The 4-story atrium, perhaps the atrium doesn't need to be 4 stories. Maybe it could be reduced. And we're not saying this is what you must do. Don't get me wrong. It's just these are perhaps different ways to get to an equitable solution. One of the commenters tonight made a comment about, again, supporting Howard Brown. That's been the consistent theme. But is this kind of sort of soulless, or is it kind of maybe an office park type of building? I know that I've heard that from the unit owners in my association. Do we want a building that fits the neighborhood, or is it something that could be plopped down in a suburban office park somewhere? So ultimately, this is again less of a question and more just I want the zoning board members to hear that we are enthusiastic. Let me underscore that. We are enthusiastic about our potential new neighbor having Howard Brown in the area, but we have had concerns. We do have concerns, and I don't know that they've all been really fully addressed so that we have a comfort level with this new development. Thank you.
David, did you want to address any of the concerns there?
I think I can say, we actually really appreciate the support for the mission, and if any of our responses, at least from the Howard Brown side, have seemed to call that into question, we apologize for that. We're not. We know that people support the mission, and we know that there are valid questions about the proposed rezoning and the building characteristics. The issues around the setback on the 5th floor, principally responding to concerns we heard early on about the frontage of the building appearing too imposing, and so inspired by 800 West Cornelia, where it has 4 floors and a 5th with a deep setback, we went in that direction so that the frontage would not be too imposing. The issue around use of the balcony, I mean, we want to be clear there's not going to be a party deck. It's really for business purposes, and so we're not going to create disruption. So that's what we're trying to say there. And yeah, there are valid opinions about the proposal, which is why we're having the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. And next we have a question from Catherine Kerr, who is having technical issues with the mic. So the question she typed out for us is, my question is $6.5 to $6.7 million a sweetheart deal or a realistic economic price? And I believe she's referring to the property closing price for her previous comments.
Yeah, so we've priced there are a couple considerations there. You know, we are within market for the acquisition with the approved zoning, and we will not be if not, and that will affect our ability to finance a project, which is why we are requesting the zoning as a condition of closing. We're under contract, and we've already spent significantly on preparing for the project. We'd hoped that this that you know that the debate about the zoning proposal would have happened earlier. That's no one's fault except the pandemics, that it got significantly delayed, but that is also added to costs because we've had to extend the contract. So we stay so that we still can close on the purchase. But currently, you know, our board will not also approve an acquisition that's not market value, and this under the current proposal is market value.
I do want to make a correction, Nicole. I saw an email where I indeed stated in this email that I would read this letter. So I think it's fair that I read this letter. I don't recall writing it, but I see it, so I think it's fair to read it. So thank you, Nicole. It's from the Cornelia Way Condominium Association. It says, "Dear Mr. Kappelman, the Cornelia Way Condominium Association was thrilled to learn of Howard Brown's Health Center's planned expansion in Lakeview on February 14th, 2020. Our homeowners association and the units that constitute the HOA are deeply aligned with Howard Brown and support its mission and vision for the LGBTQA community. After reviewing," and this was dated July 28th, after we had numerous meetings, but after reviewing the proposed plans drafted by Architrave for the new expanded health center, Cornelia Way has concerns over the structure and design of the new building, planned zoning changes, and conformity with surrounding neighborhood. Our main concern is that the proposed building and planned zoning change do not conform to the community and will result in the restriction to direct light and airflow to the surrounding neighborhood. As seen in the solar study provided by Architrave, Cornelia Way will have restricted direct sun beginning at 12 p.m. through the end of day all year round. As such, we have identified 3 main points we would like to propose and have addressed. An additional 5 feet between the proposed building's east elevation and the Cornelia Way property line. Currently, this is set at 5 feet, and we would like to know if there is consideration to extend this back to a total of 10 feet, eliminating 5 and 6 stories to maintain cohesiveness and conformity with the neighborhood and adhere to current zoning regulations, and any setback applied on the west elevation applied to the east elevation. We welcome any dialogue to address the above concerns and look forward to any future meetings to discuss the proposed plans further. Sincerely, Nicole Platt. That was dated July 28th, and since then, I think we had either 1 or 2 meetings with the residents, and I think we had 2 meetings afterwards with the Triangle Neighbors Association to address some of those concerns. I know not all of them were addressed, but there was a give and take. Maybe Frankie or David could comment more on that.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Oh, you're on mute.
Frankie, you're on
Frankie.
mute.
Sorry, I had called in with audio because I was having some internet difficulties, but please let me know if you can't hear me. I'll speak to that a little bit. So prior to when that letter was dated, that is when we still had that 6-story building. And so we did remove that 5th story. We also did increase that the setback along Cornelia because originally that was much smaller. And so the hope was to reduce that setback and reduce the impact of the sunlight on that building. And so those are the two main concessions that we made for the Cornelia residents. And then after that, if we're talking about timelines, since then we've had, I believe it's 3 meetings, as Calvin spoke to, with both direct neighbors and then triangle neighbors, and then 2 meetings with triangle neighbors.
So Frankie, how many meetings total is that?
And then I can also show, we do have, I believe the sun study that that letter is referencing the sun study that we proposed with the 6-story building. And I do have an updated sun study for the 5-story building, which I can share. I do believe that, and I'll share that right now. So just to walk through, the top row is winter and the bottom row is summer. The buildings to the east, especially in winter, are still within the shadow of our building. In summer, in the afternoon, there is a portion of this building that is definitely within our shadow. I would like to point out that if this building was built to existing zoning, that would also occur. And so just to the main difference when we talk about reducing a floor and the impact on sunlight is that the impact on the building immediately across Halsted has been reduced significantly, while the impact on the buildings immediately to our east has been reduced, not as significantly, just based on how the sun and spacing works. So that's kind of the updated sun study, which I know was requested from the community. So I did want to have a chance to be able to show that tonight.
I also remember.
And Frankie, there was a question. I'm sorry, there was a question, Frankie, about the number of.
Excuse me. There was also some concern about the 6-story height, and I remember during that meeting when we discussed it, I mentioned that there was a 6-story building built directly east of my building, and we also were concerned about losing direct sunlight. And you know what? There was some loss of sunlight, but our neighborhood community organization that supported it believed that there was still more benefit than a loss of sunlight in my yard, and so that they approved it. I was surprised it was not a significant thing. Actually, we're still able to grow plants. My husband is a gardener, and we grow plants that exist in direct sunlight, and it's not hampered it at all. And it's directly east of me.
And Frankie, I'm not sure if you heard, Tressa was asking you to clarify how many community meetings in total, if you can share that number.
Oh, I'm sorry, my audio did cut out for a second. I believe it's 8, and total community meetings, and that includes both the conversations we've had directly with different neighborhood associations, as well as a meeting with East Lakeview neighbors with their formal meeting, and that was in spring. A meeting with Triangle neighbors much earlier, I believe in spring, and then 2 follow-up meetings at with Triangle neighbors.
And the other meetings were with the direct neighbors. So there were about 5 meetings with the direct neighbor, or 4, something like that.
Yeah, and those were with different smaller groups of direct neighbors, whether that's one HOA or a couple of HOAs that have reached out directly to us and kind of requested to have those conversations. And a lot of the feedback is based specifically on those conversations. And the changes that we've kind of administered was based specifically on those conversations.
How many change iterations have you gone through? How many times did the architects go back and make changes based on the community feedback?
We're on our 3rd redraw at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we do have another question from a resident. So Cameron Jones. Cameron?
Hi, again, thank you all for doing this evening and taking the time. Because again, just like I'm on the west side, luckily. So, I mean, Frankie, I think you've done a fantastic job with explaining these things and really being able to demonstrate how it's going to impact our neighborhood. If I could, though, maybe ask you to put up that summer solar study one more time for me, because I think for the east side, and I'm going to speak again a little bit on their behalf as well, I think if you imagine walking out on your balcony, their balcony is now going to be 5 feet from a brick wall, and that goes all the way up. And so while I realize it's still within zoning, again, back to a community and how we try to make sure everybody's taken care of, we want to make sure that with their side of the building, they actually take care of too, because right now it's basically a 5-foot narrow alleyway. And I don't know if you can zoom in, but if you can point, yeah, just like you're doing, it's right there, that little tiny oh, perfect. You're so awesome, Frankie. Thank you. Right there is where their balconies are back there. And they're going to be slammed right up against the brick walls. And so again, back to, we are a community. We're residential primarily with our retail spaces, but they don't have any choice. No one, while we say, and it's great, we're grateful that you're taking them into consideration, but they aren't the big fish in the pond. And now every time they walk out on their balcony, when they go on their rooftop even, they're going to see nothing but a big brick wall in front of them. So we're just trying to figure out what are some ideas that can be suggested from you all, because you've done the studies, you understand how the building configurations need to be, because right now, if they walk out on their balcony, there's going to be a brick wall 5 feet from their face. So they really don't have any options from their perspective. So y'all have done a fantastic job catering to our bigger buildings and where we live, but I really want to see if we can take care of them as well. Is there any suggestions to try to help them out? And I'm not saying you have to suggest it tonight, but is there something we can do? Because if you look at that side of the building, it's all open right now because the building is so low. It's a 1-story right now across the street. But when that wall goes up and the building goes up, they're going to be completely in a cave and completely blocked in, rooftop all down through their balconies on that side of the building. So if there's any suggestions, anything that we can possibly do to try to help them out, because I mean, they live there, they enjoy it. We look across the street and see them on their decks, on the rooftop, having parties and enjoying themselves, which they won't be able to do that really anymore, because it's going to be, again, a big brick wall and then their home, and there's really nothing. They can sit on their balcony, but there's really not anything to see. So I would like to just put that out there for y'all for consideration and try to, because again, you've done a great job helping redesign this, helping us understand what it's going to really look like and the impact it's going to have on the neighborhood. But I feel like they need some help. I want to make sure that we've thought about everyone in this situation, not just the big 800 West, not just the big condos across the street. What about them? Because that's one of the old homes that were here, and they're living there, and it's a beautiful place. And once that's kind of taken away, they have no really outdoor space at that point. So that was all I had to say. If y'all have suggestions, anything we could potentially do to kind of help that for them. And as I mentioned, you don't have to do that tonight. I'm just saying if there's something we can do. But if you have suggestions, fantastic.
Sure. Frankie or David?
Yeah, we don't have any suggestions now. I mean, we've looked at all sorts of options. Our real estate advisor did reach out to the building that's directly east of us to explore those, explore some, what could be redrawn short of lowering the building, which unfortunately won't meet our financial or operational needs. So, yeah, we don't have anything more to add at this moment, but thank you.
So it's now getting close to 9 p.m.
Yes, Alderman, this next question is the last question, and I'm unmuting Lewis Harris.
That was the first question and the last question. Something did come up during this meeting, which was totally new. How serious is the possibility that the clinic will be operating late at night? I mean, someone did raise the suggestion that, oh, you could, open late night on Friday and Saturday night. Previously, the assumption had been that it would operate under routine business hours ending in the early evening. How serious is that proposition?
So, that's a separate kind of question. I mean, right now the question is really about the physical proposed building and the zoning question.
Well,
We,
it does
we don't
affect
have, I'm not done. We
I'm sorry.
don't have any clinics that are operating beyond 7 p.m. I think if we were to pursue that, it would be in full consultation with the neighborhood and the neighborhood stakeholders. The reason it was suggested was really about the clientele and the entertainment corridor and where that might be, a measure that could be synergistic. But right now, all of our clinics, the latest is closing at 7. So we
Okay.
don't have anything like that. So
Thank-
anything operationally would go also, to the stakeholders.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderman.
All right, so thank you all so much again for attending our committee meeting, and thank you for sharing your questions and feedback. At this point in time, the committee will now vote for the proposal online. Kylie will explain that process. We'll share the results via the newsletter and our website. So you can vote yes or no, or I'm just speaking off cuff. You can decide to deliberate now. So we could deliberate now if you'd like.
I think we should have the committee members, thank you, Howard Brown, for coming. I think we'll have Howard Brown leave the meeting, and we'll have the committee members talk amongst themselves for a little bit and then make the decision as to whether they're gonna vote tonight or not.
Sounds good to me. That's what we typically do. We're forging new ground here. So thank you, Howard Brown. You all can leave and this committee will discuss.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman. Thank you, neighbors. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Howard Brown team, there's a red button in the bottom right corner to leave the meeting. All right, it looks like the Howard Brown team is offline.
Discussion?
Yeah, I don't know how large is that building that's on the east side of the proposed building? The building that's going to lose the sunshine and, their balconies are going to be up against a brick wall. I mean, do you know how big the building is? How many people are going to be affected?
I believe that the building is 3 stories, and if anything so here's an issue that we bring up a lot of times with zoning changes. So if someone builds as of right, means they can come in, tear down the buildings, build whatever they want. They could build closer to the lot line than Howard Brown is, and they would have an even closer brick wall to their property all the way up to the top.
Okay, but do we know how many people live in this building? How many balconies are going to be affected?
I think there are 3 balconies that are going to be affected. So 3 there.
3.
I believe it's 3. James, I don't know if it's 4. It's either 3 or 4. I have to go back and look.
Sure. And is there an alley separating the 2 buildings?
No, not in the front. So the other thing is their building is all brick on the side. There's a setback after the facade, the front of the building. And you can see if you're looking at the, I believe it shows that on the diagrams that are on our website. The link that we sent to everyone.
Yeah, I know there's a setback in the front of the building.
No, in the back. There's a setback in the back. And so as it goes along there is a setback. In the front, they don't have windows or anything there or balconies. It's in the back.
So where the condominium building is, the wall that's closest to the building has no windows. Is that correct, Tressa?
Yes, but there are balconies and there are some windows in the back.
in the further back where there's more space.
Where the alley is.
Okay.
The element that trusses.
Nothing, there's just a brick wall. Brick walls don't look at brick walls.
Go ahead, Mark.
The element that,
sorry.
thank you. The which Mark?
Oh.
the element that Tressa just spoke to, which is, when I initially became involved in this conversation a while ago, and was hearing concerns from neighbors, and I was sympathetic to the concern about zoning related to this building, and then I began to understand the zoning aspect a little bit differently, because the zoning question really has nothing to do with the sunlight question, because the zoning element, unchanged, a building can be built there that would have the same, if not worse, impact on that building immediately east of them. That was the part that I was unaware of. I was learning more about the zoning impact. It appears that the zoning difference does not affect height, but only affects density. And the density issue has not really been a major stumbling block in the conversations regarding this building. It's been more about how to make it fit into the neighborhood and how to make the height fit in as well. And so when Howard Brown reacted to that, I became more, I became better educated about zoning, but also it seemed to make sense to me that this is actually, somebody else could come along and build something closer to the building to the east, the same height, and take no consideration for the neighbors to the east, which is unfortunate, but similar to James' backyard, we're all impacted by different construction and progress going on surrounding us. And I don't know if that's really the way that zoning is intended to be, to just shut down that progress, especially in this case when the zoning itself with regards to height doesn't seem to be applied there. If that makes any sense.
Say something about the zoning issue. Do you still have that slide that they showed us where they compared the current zoning, the intermediate zoning, and the requested zoning in terms of height and square footage? Because the current zoning is C1-2, and I don't think it could be anywhere near that high, and they wouldn't build to the east line unless they were being vindictive.
Well, or they wanted to maximize their FAR.
Well, they're under C1-2, the FAR would be something like 60% of what they're requesting. I don't remember the numbers exactly. I wish you could find them.
It's on the website. It's on the link that we have.
But is my understanding correct that the height is actually not the issue with regards to the zoning?
So
under the current version.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I apologize. So in other words, when I was listening to the presentation even this evening, that the height that they have now agreed to developing is actually equal to what they're allowed to do under the existing zoning.
It's not. I understand what you're saying now. It's actually not. So but the neighbors had, so in the neighborhood meetings that I have attended, they asked them to do a C1-3 zoning. And that's why they listed that in that diagram, because if they did a C-3, the height would be the same. It's the volume that would be different. So yeah, if you can see here, thanks Chelsea. If you can see here, the, oh, it doesn't have the C1-3. Oh, we don't, you know what, Marty? It doesn't have the C1-3, it just has the -5. So the one that Frankie added, actually shows the -3 had, they're within the height of the -3, which is what the neighbors asked them to do.
Right.
So, and I need to say this, the neighbors every time Howard Brown made a change and you know, they said, well, can you at least take off one floor? And so Howard Brown took off one floor. And then they said, well, we want you to take off another floor. And it was a little bit like that, which was difficult to hear. But I know some people wanted the 2 floors off, you know, some people just wanted it built the way it was. Some people were saying, we want a -3 and we'd be okay with that. So there were a lot of, you know, independent voices there. And so, so they did get the height to the -3. It's just the space that they need to operate. And I think the other question that came up is they wanted them to go to be smaller and smaller, but the issue is they can't, you know, they either do this or they don't at this site because they need the space. And I think when we heard from North Halsted Business Alliance and some of the other neighbors is they really want Howard Brown to be in Boys Town. I mean, that's part of one of the reasons they chose this site. So, you know, I just want to add some of those things too, because I think some of the concerns with the neighbors, Howard Brown made changes that they asked for, and then they came back and asked for more changes. And I just think it was a little bit disingenuous.
The other thing that Howard Brown stated was that when they removed 1 floor at the request of the neighbors, that meant that they had to move some of their services off-site. Ideally, you want the services all on site. People are more likely to, who need all those services will do it if it's all at one place. So they did make a sacrifice by taking that 1 floor off. It's not the ideal, but they wanted to meet the concerns of the residents.
Kurt, do you have a question? Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Yeah, I do.
Can't hear you, Kurt.
I've got to find a compromise here. Yeah, can you hear me? This has already been asked and discussed. I'm sorry, I was trying to think at the same time.
Can't hear you, Kurt.
Kurt, I've just asked you to unmute. If you can click the prompt.
Either that or type in chat.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I rebooted something and it worked. Their balconies, are they on their south facade or are they on the west in that recess in their site plan?
Can I answer this?
Yes.
Okay, I just looked in the MLS. It's been a while since I've been in this building. That's an 8-unit condo building. It's 744 and 46 Cornelia. You know, 8 units, so 4 on each side. They're 2-bedroom units. Mostly with those vintage buildings, you know, that's pretty typical in our area where the balconies are in the back. But oddly, on both sides of this building, they're on the side. So on the 746 side, for instance, like their balcony, they have a little cover over their balcony, and that wall to the west, that is like the little Jim's wall, it makes it dark back there. So 2nd and 3rd floor are definitely going to lose their light. On the other side of the building, you know, they are blocked by the building to the east. It's so odd to have balconies on east and west sides of these buildings, and there are some windows on the sides, although not that many. There's like the door to the balcony and then probably a kitchen window. Is that helpful?
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Because the reason I was asking, I was asking them, and I know that this new building extends beyond the south face of their building. So I didn't know if on that corner of the lot to some dimension if the facade stepped back, it looks like the parking garage entrance, if the building mass stepped back to the height of their facade, extended west, and then came back out again, if that would give them some appeasement that the wall that's being built, the east wall of the new building, wasn't even overshadowing their front entry of their building. Like their bay windows and everything else are being cut off. And that would be a sliver of square footage on each floor without a significant amount of shift, or maybe that can be accommodated in reducing a 12,000 square foot balcony or something like that. I'm just looking for some kind of a little give, and architecturally, I think it would even kind of help that Cornelia facade. And there's the articulation of the aesthetic of the architecture along the street. And that south facade right now is just one big wall, ground to 5 stories plus. So it doesn't respond to the neighborhood the way you would need to if you were on Halsted. So that's just one thing I'm tossing out in that regard. Because right now they could look in their bay window and they can't even see the intersection anymore like they used to, because that's gone as well. I don't know if everybody understood kind of what I was getting at by saying, but.
Yeah, I think so part of this, Kurt, is that they have kind of gone back and forth with the neighbors to make a lot of concessions and changes. Mm-hmm. I think that your suggestion is really great, and I think we should give it to them. And just like you said, I think the setback, the staff, area up top, the outside area, that wasn't their main concern. They were trying to do a setback because the community asked for that. Mm-hmm. So, I want to be clear that they didn't want a party space. Good. Yeah, they weren't trying to get a party space there, that they were, that it's a good use of that space since they have to move it back. And because they have people working there, and it is a nice space for them to use since they've had to cut out some of their other space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I guess I was just trying to. Yeah. Go ahead.
Teresa, I think, makes a really good point that someone else could build in that building with the current zoning, and with an 8-unit building, they would be closer and more blocked than the concessions that Howard Brown is doing. I also don't think it's really fair, and we seem to do this all the time. We meet with developers, and then we make them go through iterations. Then we meet with them again, make them go through enough iterations. It's like they've come back several times. And I think that the Alderman's office, especially Teresa, has been really accommodating. And I think they've been accommodating too. And I think it's really unfortunate because it affects the buildings that are right next to it. But remember, someone could come in without any zoning variance and the building would mask what they have and cut out their light. At least we have somebody that will add value and will deal with the community. And again, I really appreciate you hearing what we have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu.
And I do think that Mark Zipper's comment is really relevant to that, because when Mark spoke to where the balconies are placed, if you think about the east side balconies on that building, they're already facing walls. And realistically, the tradition of the rear balconies would be what would be, I guess, normal. I think that Stu and Mark both raised very, very valid points relative to this building, this one building relative to the site for Howard Brown in total.
Let me clarify that. Like right now, the east, or that 746 Cornelia, really only the first floor, that balcony is blocked by a wall. So second and third floor unit owners will lose sun or face a new brick wall with this building. One thing I'm not clear about is if Howard Brown didn't, the current zoning, how high can anybody go on that property in the current zoning? How many stories?
If we go back to that, did that diagram not say? I'm just trying to.
It might have, but I forgot. Oh.
Well, I'm trying to remember too. I mean, it's -1, so it's like a 1.5.
55 feet.
Oh, it's -2, right? I'm sorry, it's -2. So it's I'm thinking of another project. So it would be about, probably about 3 at the most.
So,
Residential smaller.
It's so, we've had enough of these meetings where, we want to do what's right. We're not going to please everybody. And I feel bad for the people at 746 Cornelia. But, back to what Stu was saying, anybody could build a 3-story building there. So the the top floor of 746 Cornelia is going to be blocked by just about anyone who purchases that property, because somebody paying $6 or $7 million for that property is not going to keep it as it is. Did I make a point?
Yes. Thank you.
And a rather good point, because that's what I try to say. It's like, I understand I feel really bad for that building, but somebody could come in and not give them a 5-foot setback and build even taller. I think it's 40. They always go 40, 50 feet. So it's going to block an 8-story building anyway. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's where I was going also, Stu, because I mean, that's what I had understood from those previous meetings is that no matter what occurs, a new construction in that space is going to no longer be a single-story building, and it's going to be multiple stories and block the space.
And I just also want to say that, people talked about traffic, but if it becomes a residential, if someone, ended up purchasing it and putting residential units up there, the traffic would be more than it's likely to be with this. Especially because a lot of their, they've stated before, and then in the smaller neighborhood meetings, that a lot of their parking spaces are for employees that drive there from from far away. Most of their clients walk and take public transportation. So there's very little traffic in that sense.
Yeah, I want to make a comment. One resident brought up something about parking and wanting to build more parking. I could play the exact opposite on that. In a lot of the condo buildings, I'm seeing a huge decrease in sale of parking spots. Why? We don't need cars. I mean, seriously, and I've said this in a number of zoning meetings, we're having a hard time selling parking spots, and they said most of the people that will use the facility come within a mile of it. You're like, okay, that's a good walk. But one question I had about the parking trusses, since I wasn't part of the neighborhood meetings, was there a discussion about the entrance and exit to the parking garage on Halsted versus Cornelia?
There was a discussion, and right now I am not remembering exactly what it was, what the differences were. Do you or?
I kind of remember that. I know that Tunney doesn't like any more curb cuts on Halsted Street. It is a commercial. It is a commercial street, so there is commerce supposed to be on the street, stores. People coming in and out, it's more chance of hitting a pedestrian than on the side street. So that's kind of why the parking that I recall, Teresa, was discussed.
That's correct.
Halsted's a P street, pedestrian street. So.
Yep.
It's also a bike street, right? Like
right, it's a bike street, right? All those things. So all those things taken consideration, that would be the right choice to do it.
Yeah, I was playing both sides. It surprised me. I thought that the neighborhood group would have a problem with traffic on Cornelia and the fact that it's one way. On the other hand, if we put it on Halsted, then we would sacrifice retail. And to me, we want to get as many retail spaces as possible. So I could plus and minus it. It's not something I feel strongly with. And I suspected it was addressed. I just wanted to hear, kind of what the thoughts were on it.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to remember that at Cornelia and Halsted, that going east, the street is one way east, going and then west is one way west. So reality, this is not a contiguous street where you have people coming from Clark or something down Cornelia. It's literally it splits 2 ways. It will never be a high density street in that regard, and people going to that parking will just pull back out. And I think that's what David may have been referring to when he said that it's a simple flow, because it would continue straight to the lakefront. And anybody who's west of Halsted would not be heading that way.
Yeah, I'm kind of watching some of the buildings that we have approved, like Halsted Flats, and every time I'm there, and we discussed that one having entrance and exit on Bradley, and we even discussed the changing of the traffic flow on there, and then of course we landed on it getting out on Halsted, and sometimes when I see people trying to get out of that garage, I'm like, damn, did we make a wrong decision with that? But you try to learn by those things, and so whenever I look at a building now in chatting with you guys that are more architecturally whatever, I'm like, okay, does this make sense, and how will the traffic flow work with it, and who's going to back me up from an appointment? That was a joke.
That's a that's a good point. I mean, I think it like you said, I think it is important to learn from the other buildings, and thinking about that is really important. Absolutely. So
yeah, and the parking, we hear the same sorts of things like shadow studies and parking, and we're living in a changing world, especially this year. How is COVID and the switch from maybe working downtown to more in neighborhoods going to affect traffic and people's propensity to have cars? I mean, we have to balance all those things in these sorts of committees, and and there's no answer because it'll change by tomorrow.
yeah, there's a lot of changes going on, that's for sure. Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to say there seems to be a lot of confusion about what could be built as of right under C1-2. And so I'm sort of leaning toward not voting at this time because we could pass that correct information around.
Well, let me pull up the code. If there are any other questions, please ask while I do that.
Well, we saw that the square footage would be about 40,000, which is roughly a FAR of 3. The floors in the proposed building are like 13 to 17,000, so that's 3 floors. So if somebody wanted to build as of right, they could only build 3 floors on that part of the lot. And that's why I said before that it'd be vindictive to stick it up against the neighbors to the east. But we know that the purchase wouldn't go through for $6 million if it remained in the present zoning.
Right, they would have to come down in price. But I don't think that, I mean, and here's the thing that I want people to understand. Howard Brown, like they said that they had done them, that it's within the market of that area. So for what they want to build. And they're not maximizing any they don't have an ROI here. They're a nonprofit group trying to fulfill a mission here. So it's a little bit different than some of our past projects. Okay. Any other questions? Concerns?
But just the whole thing with regards to the price. I mean, the ROI question, I'm not really sure that's a relevant question anyway. If a commercial developer came in and wanted to do something that was a bad idea, if the zoning, I mean, if it made sense and it was able to be approved, I'm not sure that we really have the ability to say, well, that's a bad idea because it's too much money. Certainly the price would drop if it was used in a different way potentially, but I think this is a win-win in terms of for the neighborhood. But I do understand that the height, and I'm looking forward to hearing this, Tressa, but that the height, if it was following the current zoning, would still impact the neighbors to the east.
25,000 square feet. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, I'm not used to being put on the spot like this, going through the Chicago code. Let's see.
Howard Brown did say that they have to have that amount of FAR. They're already moving some of their services off-site to accommodate the neighbors nearby. And if their board of directors have told them that if they can't get this zoning, that they would have to abandon that site and look for someplace else.
Well, I noticed that the difference in the square footage between the current zoning and what they're asking for is only about 9,000 square feet.
Right.
And an atrium, and they have commercial space on the ground floor. So I'm not sure that we can take the word that that would be a critical change. I'm not talking about the current zoning, I'm talking about the compromise to C13.
Mm-hmm. And so what are you saying, Murray? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Well, if you look at that chart that they gave us in their presentation about the square footage under the proposal and under the C13, there's a difference of 9,000 square feet. That
right.
doesn't strike me as a huge difference, and maybe not as a deal breaker. Of course, I don't know what their finances are.
So, well, so this is the thing, is that they have already lost a lot of square footage by making these changes that the community asked for.
Right. But we all know that nonprofits are just like the for-profit developers. They come in asking for what they get, and then they meet with the neighbors, and there's pushback, and they start compromising.
And they did.
Yes, I know. And I want to say I support Howard Brown's mission and the program, and I support all the changes they've made so far, but I would like to see them come down to C13. That's my position.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But they did make it clear that they would have to, if they could not get this zoning change, the deal would fall through.
That's what they said.
Yeah, because they are, you know, it's not just them. They have to answer to their board, and their board of directors have asked for that. They either need this certain amount of square feet, or they're not able. There's no point in building there. So I think that they're getting directions from them, and I think that they're the ones that handle the money, and or that, you know, are in charge of what their best next steps are, which is a little bit different from a for-profit.
Well, of course it is. It's different, but there are parallels. And I may be the only person who looked at those square footage and saw that there was only a small difference between the C13 zoning and what they're proposing.
No, I saw that too. I think that what I also know is that from all the other meetings that I was on with them is that they've already gone down a lot in square footage. And this is kind of, and they've already had to move some of their things off site, and that this is kind of their last, like, this is as far as we can go. So that, I mean, my understanding is that the board was very reluctant to even go down that way because of the services that are needed in the community.
I pretty much begged them to take off a floor. They were very reluctant. They didn't know if the board would approve it. They did take off a floor to meet the demands of the area residents. But yeah, like Tressa said, they're stressed. They have to respond to the needs of the community, and by lowering the FAR, they're not able to do that, and more of those services are then moved off site.
And I don't know if anyone's visited their clinic recently before the pandemic, but I've been in there. It's packed. Like all of their places, it's packed. There's no seating. It's, you know, they're doing this for a reason, is what I'm saying. I don't think that those numbers are just arbitrary. And they did show the square footage for each service that they were going to provide as well. So it's getting pretty late here. It's 9:30. I don't know if anyone wants to you know, ask for a vote, you know, to ask if you want to have a vote, if we want to vote to have more information. It's really up to you guys.
I move that we take a vote.
Is there a second?
Right.
Yeah, I second.
There we go.
Let's take the vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I see who's all in favor of taking a vote?
How do we show you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. If everyone can show their screen.
Marty, we can only see your window, not your face.
Yeah, I know.
Can you see, is there, okay.
Great
Got
window.
It is a nice window.
Showing our buttons on the video.
Yep, can you show, yeah. This is to take a vote. So I don't see
Yeah.
Jim. Okay, there we go. I just want to make sure everyone's video. Kathy, are you there? I just want to see everyone's video before I take a vote. Tonya?
I vote yes.
Okay, thanks, Tonya. All right, let me see.
Marty, are you voting yes or no?
Me, I'm voting no. You can't see my hand.
Yeah, I don't see his
We're
hand.
voting for votes.
So I'm just trying to count here. Just one minute. So we got one,
No on the vote to vote.
2, 3,
We're voting
4
to
for
vote. I thought.
Jim, 5 Patrick, 6 other Patrick.
I
Stu, is
vote
your hand
yay.
up or down?
We're voting to vote, I thought. So let's.
Yes.
Yeah, we're voting to vote. We're voting to stop the meeting and vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dustin, is that your hand? I just see a finger.
Yes.
9, 10. Mark Zipper, are you voting yes or no?
Yes to vote.
Okay, 11. Kathy's got 10. Okay.
Yes.
11, 12, 13,
Yeah.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. All right. So and how many are against? See hands, please. 1, 2. 3. Let's see. I see 2 hands.
Marty and Chelsea?
Chelsea and Marty. Okay, so the yays have it.
Okay. So thank you all so much again for attending this meeting and sharing your questions and feedback.
So
we'll
wait a
vote on the
second.
proposal online.
Yeah, so I believe Kylie, have you sent everyone the link for the vote yet, for the Google vote?
There is a link to the form on the Zoom chat here. We're also going to follow up with the link on email. So don't stress if you can't access it now.
Okay.
And you all have my email and cell phone. I'll be sending out the link to the poll in the next 5 minutes. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have not received access or if you are struggling to get into the poll.
And sorry, Kylie, how long do we have to vote?
We'd like to have your vote in by midnight, but I understand some people can't do that. I'll also be sending out a video of this recording to people for tomorrow to view. They can view it to help.
Yeah, so we are hoping to get the vote in tonight like we normally do for our meetings. We usually vote at the meeting, so that'd be great if you could have it in by midnight. If you have extenuating circumstances, just let us know and we can, we can work with you. Okay, does anyone have any questions right now about the vote, about the voting?
So we're closing the meeting now and then we're going online to vote.
Yes, that's correct.
And we're being sent something?
Yes, you will receive this over email within the next few minutes.
Okay.
I put it in the chat thing and I voted already. Pretty easy. Kind of cool.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
Right?
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much. And Kylie, I want you to stay online so you can direct me again about how to record this. Great.
Absolutely.
So nice to see all you guys. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Too long.
Marty's
Yeah.
windowsill needs to be dusted.
No, it doesn't.
You.
Marty, your window looks awesome. I love it.
Great.
Thank
All
you
right.
all. We're going to end this meeting.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Tressa, thanks so much for your effort. It's really much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thanks. Okay, good night.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Kylie.